So my previous video, I spent some time talking about the millennium, that 1,000 year reign of Christ, and also a little bit of the time period leading up to that 1,000 year reign of Christ. Today, in this video, I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the millennium itself, that 1,000 year period where Jesus Christ will, after his second coming, will take hold of this world, and he will be the ruler of this world for 1,000 years. We can find scriptures that talk about this. Revelation 19 and Revelation 20 really speak to it, but there's others. And I just want to let you know that in the description below, I'm going to post scriptures about the things that I'm going to say in this video. I'm not going to have an opportunity to post them in the video, but I will list them in the description so that you can go to those scriptures and you can read them yourselves. And please feel free to add comments below or ask questions. Good dialogue is a good way for iron to sharpen iron, as the Bible says. But getting to the subject of the millennium, Revelation 19 speaks to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the battle of Armageddon. Also speaks to the resurrection, which Revelation chapter 20 specifically talks about. So when Jesus comes back and he brings back with him his people, the church, the Old Testament saints, the New Testament saints, and all those people, all of us that have been saved since the time of his death and resurrection until the time of his second coming, the Bible says, will experience that first resurrection. In Revelation chapter 20, in the first few verses, it speaks about two resurrections. It speaks, first of all, to the first resurrection, and it says, "Blessed are you if you are part of the first resurrection." That first resurrection is for all believers in Jesus Christ. The second resurrection won't happen until the end of the 1,000 year period. The first resurrection happens at the beginning of the 1,000 year reign of Christ. The second resurrection happens at the end of the 1,000 year reign of Christ. And that second resurrection is for everybody who has not believed in Jesus Christ. The Bible refers to it as the great white throne judgment. And there, everybody who has rejected God through Jesus will stand before God and be judged and then be cast into an eternity separated from God. The Bible calls that hell, of course. That's where Satan, the Antichrist, the false prophet, and every person throughout the time of humanity that has rejected God will be sent to that place and tormented really for all eternity. Remember what I said earlier, that we're all made to live forever. It's just a matter of where we're going to spend eternity, either in heaven or in hell. So, the 1,000 year reign of Christ. When Jesus returns, he is going to land on the Mount of Olives. The Bible says that his feet will touch the Mountain of Olives, and there he will take charge of the world. His throne will be in the city of Jerusalem. It will probably be on the Temple Mount. And he will reign the world, rule the world there. Now, it's interesting, the Bible talks about how there will continue to be nations. I'm not sure, the Bible's not real clear as to what that means. Does that mean that there'll be nations as we know nations today? In other words, will there be a United States of America? Will there be, an Egypt, and so on and so on? But Jesus will be in charge of these nations, or does it mean that there'll just be a nation of people that Jesus will reign over? Obviously, there will be people living all around the world, and once again, I'll put some scriptures in the description below about this, but the people that are going to live in the time of the millennium are two different kinds of people. So the first kind of people that will live in the millennium and with Jesus, I've already talked about briefly, and that is the Old Testament saints, the New Testament saints, and all believers in Jesus Christ. After the resurrection, we'll be given new bodies, immortal bodies. Right now, we're in mortal bodies, but one day we will be resurrected to bodies that will never die. They will be immortal, and we will reign with Jesus here on the earth for 1,000 years. Now, the other group of people that will be alive will be people that are in mortal bodies, just like we are now. The Bible's not clear, once again, about who and how many will make it into the millennium, but the Bible is clear that there will be people in physical bodies that will survive the final 7-year tribulation and the Great Tribulation, which is that final half of those 7 years. And after the Battle of Armageddon, they will continue to live, and they will move into that 1,000-year reign of Christ. And we don't know how many people. We don't know who. We know that the Bible talks about in Revelation 9 that a world war is going to happen that's going to kill a third of the world's population. So who will be left? We don't know. But so what's going to happen is there's going to be two sets of people in the millennium. There'll be those with immortal bodies, those that were raised to new life, and those with mortal bodies or physical bodies. And we, as believers, the Bible says, will participate in reigning with Christ in this world. In other words, He will give us responsibilities of authority here in this world. And the people that enter this 1,000-year period in the physical bodies, they will continue to grow old, to mature. They will continue to live life as we're living life now. In other words, people will be born, people are going to die. The Bible does say that life will be extended, that people will live longer in this 1,000-year reign, as opposed to the length of life that we have right now currently. And the Bible also says that death will still be part of that 1,000-year period, that death is the final enemy to be cast into the lake of fire, the Bible says. So death will not be eliminated until at the end of the 1,000-year reign. Now let me just speak to why is it 1,000 years? What's the point of that? Why can't God just come and fix everything right away? Why does He have to do like a transition period for 1,000 years, if you will? Well, this goes back to what I was talking about in my previous video about 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. It's my firm conviction that we are coming to an end of the 6,000-year period of humanity on this earth. And I get that from the genealogy records that we have in the Bible. When you talk about Adam all the way up to Jesus, we have a 4,000-year period. And then it's been about 2,000 years since the death of Jesus to where we are now. We're approaching the end of that 6,000-year period. So I really believe as we are approaching the end of this 6,000-year period, we are seeing everything happening that Jesus talked about in Matthew chapter 24, and what the Bible says in Daniel and some of his in his book and some of his chapters, like Daniel chapter 9, 7, 11, chapter 8, chapter 2. Some of the things we read about in Revelation, some of the things we read about in the book of Jude. There's many places we read about that describe what the world's going to be like at the second coming of Jesus Christ. We are seeing all that happen as we approach the end of the 6,000-year mark, which tells me that the return of Christ is going to happen somewhere around the end of that 6,000-year period, which will give Him one more set, or 1,000 years, to fulfill 7,000 years on this earth, which, remember what we talked about once again in the previous video, is that 7 is the number of completion. So we're about to hit the end of this 6,000-year period, and Jesus is going to come back. And when He comes back, He's going to kick off that final 1,000 years. And I feel like that God has purpose behind it being 1,000 years. There's something about 7 that's completion to God. And at the end of that 1,000 years reign of Christ, then God will establish a new heaven and a new earth. and the New Jerusalem will descend upon the earth. There's so many things that are going to happen, which we'll save for a later video. But so to me, this is why it has to be 1,000-year reign of Christ to fulfill God's plan. And God's plan is to have 7,000 years on this earth since the time that he created the earth and gave it life. So something to also think about is that in this, what it's going to be like during this 1,000-year reign of Christ. We talked a little bit there about the two different kinds of people that will be on this earth during that time. The Bible also talks about, like in Isaiah 65, it describes what the world's going to be like. It'll be a peaceful time. Nations will not have any need of armies. Isn't that something? As at the recording of this video, we have hotspots all over the world. There's potential for like 3 major hotspots in the world to break out in war at any time. We're talking about Israel and Iran. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine, and Turkey's involved with that. We're also talking about China and Taiwan. And America, of course, is in the middle of all those places. So the day is coming in this 1,000-year reign of Christ where there will be no more wars. The world will finally be at peace. Everything that we so desire will finally happen. And it'll be at the hand of God, not at the hand of man. We're working so hard to try to make this world better and make it the place that we want it to be, but we can't do it. We're fallible people. That means we're not perfect. We're unrighteous. We're sinners. We're broken. We can't as unbroken people fix broken things to make it right. And I'm talking about in the realm of spirituality. I'm talking about in the realm of peace on earth. We can't do that. We've been trying since the Tower of Babel to fix this world and make it the way that we want it to be, but we just can't do it. It's going to be by the hand of God and not by the hand of man. And if we could accept that, that would allow us to submit ourselves and surrender ourselves to God's leadership, and life would be so much better. But we continue to push God out of the scene, and we continue to expect things to get better based on our own understanding. And that's, to me, is the very definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So peace is going to happen during the 1,000-year reign of Christ, and that's because Jesus is going to reign with an iron rod. It says he is going to have ultimate authority, and he will bring peace into this world. Not just peace between nations, peace between individuals as well. Peace in animal life, in the animal kingdom. The Bible says that the lion and the lamb will lay down together, that he will make it to where meat eaters are vegetarians again, as far as the animals go. It's just going to be such a peaceful place for 1,000 years. And the physical people that live during that 1,000 years will multiply just like they have been for the previous 6,000 years, and there'll be new life born, and it'll be peaceful, but they will still have the freedom to choose or reject Christ. Very important thing I want to touch on here is, you might ask, well, how can there be such peace during this time? Is it just because Jesus is so powerful that he's going to reign with such authority? Well, he is powerful, and he will reign with authority, but a big reason is that the Bible says in Revelation chapter 20 that at the beginning of this 1,000-year reign of Christ, that Satan will be bound, and he will be cast into the bottomless pit, and he will be bound for 1,000 years, and he will not be allowed to go and deceive the nations like he's been allowed to do for the previous 6,000 years of human life, which tells us just what the role of Satan is and all that's going on today. Satan, that old expression, the devil made me do it? There's truth to that. Satan is such a liar and a deceiver. He is going around and he is deceiving the nations and creating strife and division and hate and war. These things that we so despise today. He is the one that is triggering all this. He is fueling our sinful natures, and we are playing right into it, just like Adam and Eve did in the very beginning. Satan hasn't changed, neither have we. And he is a deceiver of all the nations. But the Bible says that when the millennium starts, that he will be bound, he being Satan, will be bound for 1,000 years. And because of that, the world will experience peace like it never has before. And Jesus will reign on this world. And it's very interesting because at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be loosed again for a time. We don't know how long that will be, but he will be allowed to go and deceive people again. And the reason for this, you might say, well, why in the world would God do that? What's that about? It's because there are physical people that are alive at the end of the 1,000 years. And the people that are in these physical bodies, they've never really had an opportunity to act on their sinful nature to a degree where they would reject Christ. Well, God, since the beginning with Adam and Eve, desires that we choose him out of our love for him. And he's going to give all these folks a chance to choose God or to reject him. And Satan will be used to deceive those who want to reject him. And it ultimately will lead into the culmination of the end of that millennium, of that 1,000 years, where Satan will be cast into the lake of fire forever. And so will every person that chose to follow Satan, just like people have been during these first 6,000 years, just like the angels had opportunity in heaven to choose God or to choose Lucifer, and those that chose Lucifer were cast out, just like Lucifer was, and he became Satan. So all this is happening during that 1,000 years, and that's what's to come. This is our hope. Our hope is based on the second coming of Christ, and that's going to be happening soon. Once again, just like in my previous video, I want to remind you, watch the nation of Israel. It's God's time clock. The nation of Israel will kick off that final 7 years, which will lead to the second coming of Christ, which will lead to the millennium. So we're watching Israel very closely. But keep your hope. Don't have false expectations. Don't expect this world to change for the better. It's not going back to quote-unquote normal. There's no such thing as going back to that. The world's just going to progressively get worse, and we need to have discernment for this. We need to accept this and understand where we are in the time period of God's redemptive plan, and not expect things to be comfortable and go back to the way they were. It's just we're in the midst of the transitioning into that final 7 years, which hasn't happened yet, but it's getting ready to. And we just got to trust God and abide in him, and keep our faith on that hope that we have in Jesus Christ and all the inheritance that we're going to share with him when he comes back. Thank you for listening, and I hope this helps you, and may you have a great day.